It's December 19th, 2022. This is Roqe. Well, hi there. Welcome to episode 224 of Roqe. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't lose faith in this revolution. I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto, Canada. Salam dostan aziz. Durud bar shama. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't lose faith in this revolution. With the ongoing horrific news coming out of Iran and every sad revelation, you may have noticed a creeping concern in some corners about the possibilities of change, a sense of deflation. This is actually not a surprise. A desperate desire for stability, for a fast resolution to an upheaval, is a characteristic of any revolutionary era. And for those of us in the Iranian diaspora, exhaustion can team up with guilt and fear that the end is nowhere near. Maybe you know someone like the man I was speaking to this weekend, someone who's been very active in social media himself, who lamented that there still aren't millions of people in the Iranian streets. Maybe this just isn't happening, he said. Maybe we've been wrong. Well, with all due respect, the last thing we should be doing is complaining this revolution is taking too long. Here's a better idea. Try to look at this with a little less emotion and impatience when you think of the outcome we need, and remember that anything worthwhile isn't built on speed. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't lose faith. I'm not always convinced being a history and poli-sci grad got me much, but it can come in handy in moments like this to give some context. The truth is, if you don't tend to treat this like a revolutionary race, you can objectively come to realize that all the correct ingredients are currently in place. Long-term causes and the popularity of a socio-political goal at odds with the regime in power, short-term triggers of widespread protest, moments of violent confrontation, national strikes and economic turmoil, growing defections and the consolidation of a broad alliance against the existing regime. Much of this is happening, and more in the current Iranian context. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't lose faith in this revolution. What we can learn from the past is that revolutions may look like a single event, but they're not experienced that way. Rather, they occur as extended periods in which the routines of normal life are dislocated and existing rituals lose their meaning. Depending on who you ask, the Russian Revolution lasted anywhere from 6 to 20 years before it took place overnight. The 1979 Iranian Revolution that led to the consolidation of power by these same murderous mullahs was widely considered lightning fast, but it actually occurred over the course of a year, from the first major protests in early 1978 to the arrival of Khomeini 12 months later. Today we're only 12 weeks removed from the killing of Mahsa Amini. In the social media age, there's a tendency to want to get the buzz of immediate news being fed from our tiny screens into our bloodstreams. If we wake up and don't see major stories and significant advance, we wonder if we should keep giving this revolution a chance. Where's the united leadership? Who's calling the shots? Why isn't there more action? Isn't it clear there isn't enough traction? Well, history actually teaches us that while people sometimes imagine yesterday's revolutions as planned and carried out by self-conscious insurrectionaries, this has rarely, if ever, been the case. Instead, revolutions are periods in which social actors with different agendas become fused into a more or less uniform movement. The French Revolution was seismic in fundamentally replacing autocracy, but the men and women who made the French Revolution happen had no model to follow, no plans, no platform agreed upon in advance. They persisted for years and were victorious in creating a new circumstance. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't lose faith in this revolution. More important, there is no way back at this point in the process for major change in Iran. Stepping away from supporting this revolution with everything we can right now at this moment means abandoning those 20,000 Iranians who've been jailed for this cause. It means abandoning those on death row awaiting public executions. It means abandoning the legacy of all of those dear souls and children we've already lost. The truth is, we have no choice. There is no turning back. There's only continuing our collective voice. Convincing yourself the revolution is not happening is not just anti-historical and counterfactual. It's a recipe for quiescence and letting this regime off the hook. And honestly, it may start to become an excuse for you to feel better about closing the book. So maybe shake it off, pace yourself, keep healthy, and find what you need to cope. It's a marathon, not a sprint. The revolution is afoot. Don't ever lose hope. Coming up on this edition of Roqe, legal expert Awin Tavakoli in Zurich, social media activist Mahsa Townshend in California, and psychologist Sara Rahimi here with us in the Roqe Roundtable. This is Roqe, episode 224, The Uprising. It's a marathon, not a sprint. Don't lose faith in this revolution. All right, here we are back live in the Roqe studio for the this episode 224. You know, last week we put out our new documentary, The Revolution from the Backyard. So we had taken a short hiatus from the regular Roqe programming. We're back to it now, which doesn't mean you can't see the documentary. It's sitting there on our YouTube channel, and we invite you to take a look at it, youtube.com/Roqe Media. In the meantime, quite an episode we've got for you. You might have heard a whole bunch of talk about political guardianships, also called political sponsorships or patronage. This is the idea of major political players like MPs or members of parliament or the like sponsoring or being the guardians of those who have been put on death row inside Iran, these people outside of Iran. Well, we've got somebody who can speak to that, our friend, the lawyer and outspoken person in Zurich, Awin Tavakoli, coming up to join us to talk about, I mean, she's been outspoken on all kinds of levels, but she's particularly been dealing with this issue of political guardianships, and I will speak to Awin about that. Plus Mahsa Townshend, Mahsa in Orange County, California, coming up before this show is done. Happy to have her coming on the show. She spoke at the big rally they had in Los Angeles this weekend. She's been very outspoken in the last few months, which is relatively new to her to be this level of an activist. She embraces the term overnight activist. Somebody was trying to attack her by calling her that, and she now has owned that. But she's been doing some great work in terms of her messaging on social media, and she comes from a particular perspective, which is very anti-JCPOA, any nuclear deal, anything like that. She's been pretty consistent about that for a long time. So we'll get her opinion and her perspective on what's happening these days and ask her what it was like in LA on the weekend at that rally. In the meantime, let's have a Roqe roundtable here. We've got our trusted and brilliant regulars, Smart Pega. Hello, Pega.
Hello.
Groovy Shaya. Hello, sir.
Hi, Azizam.
Hi, Azizam. And joining us in the Roqe studio for our Roqe roundtable, Sara Rahimi. Sara is a qualifying registered psychotherapist, a member of the Canadian Counseling and Psychotherapy Association, a professional public speaker, a certified life coach, and a grief recovery specialist. She is a member of our Roqe roundtable today, and she is here in the Roqe studio. Say hello to Sara Rahimi. Hello.
Hey, Jian.
Very nice to have you here.
Thank you.
Long time coming. We've wanted you here, but you have too much work to do with all your clients right now.
Yes.
And I guess it's not a bad segue to something I was thinking about talking about anyway. And then when we realized that we've got you coming into the studio, it's kind of kismet. It's a perfect opportunity to talk about this because it is up your alley in terms of what you do professionally. It occurs to me that there are a lot of people having a hard time right now. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't exclude myself from this, and this is something I know from years of doing broadcasting and from years of therapy that Christmas time, holidays tend to be a difficult time anyway for people when it comes to anxiety and depression and issues when the family gets together, and taking a break and taking perspective can sometimes be a difficult thing, and the Christmas rush and all the holidays that we experience in the West. But for the Iranian community and the Iranian diaspora, this is, of course, an amplified time of difficulty. And it's kind of like, I mean, we've been through this now for over 3 months. And I remember, Pega, it was a couple of months ago, you said, listen, I need a few days. Yeah. I have to turn off my phone for a few days. And we've had a few people on the show, Sara, you might know this, some psychologists and therapists, where I talk about, hey, how do we navigate this? Obviously, there's people on the front lines in Iran who are dealing with a lot more than we are, just looking at it in social media and doing rallies and demonstrations in the diaspora. But this is having a significant effect in underscoring the trauma that most of us already have as Iranians, having been exiled from the country, etc. So to kick things off with you today, tell me what you've been witnessing in terms of people having a tough time, and then we'll get to prescriptions of how you counsel people through this.
Sure, Jian. Yes, people are having, basically they're experiencing a lot of different emotions, from anger to sadness to frustration to shame and guilt, to extreme grief and sadness and disappointment, and also hope. So they're experiencing all these range of different emotions, and also, as you mentioned, I have so many clients coming to me basically wanting to work on some of their past traumas that they had never ever touched them, and they're just realizing that how much these like the movement and basically the revolution is triggering those traumas, and they never thought about that.
Right.
It's been a lot of emotions, and it's funny to see that a lot of them are coming basically as anger and aggressiveness. And as you can see on social media, people attack each other all the time.
Yeah. Let's get to that, but let me just,
sure,
because I'm going to ask you specifically about anger. I know it's something you've talked about, but just on the point about the trauma, it's interesting when we did this documentary in Istanbul, and I think you've seen it.
Yeah,
you were at the screening we had, one of the screenings we had. One of the guests that we had in Istanbul, somebody who actually, she's a business person, but she does yoga instruction, etc. She talked about this revolution as a healer, like it's a collective healing that we're going through. And of course, that's a double-sided coin, because healing involves walking through a fire itself in terms of feeling that trauma. So the triggering the trauma is not all bad, in the sense that it's bringing things to the fore, right? That we have to deal with at some point in our lives, about being Iranian, about the revolution, the other revolution, about the war, about living under these conditions where we couldn't return to our homeland, all of those things. But the healing is good and bad at the same time? Exactly.
I'm glad that you actually mentioned that. Yes, part of the healing work or the recovery that we do is when we go back and revisit the story of the trauma, and we try to see through the lens of somebody who's a wise adult and not basically the wounded child or the wounded person. So basically we change the narrative, and I think what we are seeing these days is exactly the same thing. A lot of emotions that have been suppressed are coming up, and going back by visiting all the past traumas, and then processing them, and then at the same time facing what we had to face before, facing it now. It is very, very, it's healing.
Someone like my mother, my dear, beautiful, wonderful mother, she has said, we grew up in the West, so we always had Christmas. We went through the rituals, maybe not on a religious basis, but gave each other presents, had a Christmas tree, etc. She said, again, I'm not really up for Christmas this year. No. I mean, this is somebody who's been outside of Iran for decades. Obviously all of our family is still there, etc. But on the face of it, you would say, okay, well, there's these things happening in Iran, but really, what does it have to do with somebody who's been removed from that for most of her life, But she is so upset and so involved in seeing what's going on in Iran, same as all of us, scrolling through, looking at the horrible images, hoping for positivity, hoping for change, etc., that she can't even bring herself to want to, have a Christmas dinner. She said, let's not do that this year. Let's do something different. And that kind of trauma doesn't have a best before date on it, does it? It doesn't. You don't have to have just come from Iran to be feeling that.
No. No, actually, it's like everybody goes through trauma. Everybody, even people who don't live in Iran, even Canadians, right? But we don't really know how much trauma we have experienced.
Trauma exists for non-Iranians? This is a revelation. Yeah.
It is actually. You know what? It's funny, but it's different. It's very different. Like what I see at work with Iranians, I see a lot of childhood trauma, or the war trauma, or the trauma based on the society or the culture or the
displacement.
Exactly. Whereas I see a lot of trauma for non-Iranians, with a lot of childhood sexual abuse. In relation to their family members even. So it's very different, but everybody has definitely gone through trauma, some sort of trauma.
I've got to think part of it as well is that if you're engaged with the images and engaged with the storyline of what's happening in Iran, and for many, 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 many Iranians around the world, that's become our 24/7 ritual. It's hard not to feel affected by that, right? You don't have to be Iranian to be looking at that and be affected by it, and it's something that these are decisions we make throughout our life where we sort of go, I know there's horrible things happening in this part of the world. I choose to not look at it constantly because I get too upset. Those people who say, I never watch the news. You never watch the news? Yeah. No, it's too upsetting for me. And you kind of think, well, I applaud your ability to live in that way, but how is that possible, to sort of deny reality? But in this case, it's hard for Iranians, many of us, to look away. We're doing a show here, so you could say, well, we feel some kind of responsibility. But my mom, she just cares too much. This is the place where she grew up. This is the place where our family is. This is the place where she had fond memories pre-revolution, pre-79 revolution, etc., etc., etc.
It is actually. I came here when I was 35. So whatever I see that is happening in Iran is extremely impacting me. And it's funny, sometimes my fiance Matthew, he looks at me and how he can see how everything is impacting me emotionally, and he can see other friends. And he questioned the other day, he was asking me, he said, so Sara, how come you get so emotionally impacted by all these events and the revolution and the movement, but let's say so and so, it doesn't seem that they're so bothered by that? And I'm like, that's a very good question. So I don't know, I grew up there. I'm especially as somebody, what you mentioned about your mom, I think when we see Iranians going through a lot of hardship and we feel the pain, we empathize with them and we know their pain, we become, I would say, after a while, we become so exhausted, emotionally exhausted and drained. And there's actually in psychology, there's a term called compassion fatigue. I don't know if you've heard of that or not, but it's when you actually constantly take care of someone else's, either emotionally or physically, and you show lots of empathy, and it happens.
You're drained.
Exactly. You get drained, and then after a while, you just think that, I can't do this anymore.
There's, in that list of that confluence of emotions that we're feeling, that you listed in the, anger, sadness, and also some hope, etc. One thing you said there was guilt. And I find that to be a very interesting one. People have been talking about guilt, and I guess this is associated with the idea that there is something happening that we profoundly care about, that we want to support, that we want to be part of, that we want to help, and yet ultimately we are removed, physically removed from the center of the action, and we feel guilty about that. Is that the idea?
Exactly. So it is, it's interesting. Probably you've heard of survivor's guilt,
Yes.
right? So something that is happening among a lot of people is that we are trying to help. We are doing whatever we can. We protest. We do all these hashtags. We sign petitions. We go and see, let's say, the members of parliaments, right? But because we are not there on the streets, you know, with the people who are being killed, we feel very guilty that we cannot do enough for them. Or if anything happens to our children, and then we think that, why it didn't happen to me? Or why am I even here? And my people should suffer so much, you know? So it is the survivor's guilt, basically. And also, we feel that guilt, and we feel ultimately the shame. And
what's the shame that we feel?
So basically the shame of, again, not being able to help, not being able to do enough for them, not being able to get them out of the prison, for example, right? Or take away their pain, all those mothers and families that have lost their kids, right? So we cannot take away their pain. Even me as a therapist, sometimes I look at my client sitting in front of me, and I cannot take away that pain. So it is the shame. And it's funny, I like this, that Brené Brown says, shame is the response to helplessness.
Yeah.
So that feeling of helplessness.
There's always a good Brené
right?
Brown quote.
I love
for every occasion.
I'm a big fan.
Yeah, me too. But you know, this resonates for me. I think about on the weekend I was at a rally, and you know, people tend to come up and say nice things, and they come up and say, John, thank you for all the work you're doing. You're really doing a lot, and you know, and my knee-jerk reaction every single time, I mean, I've got to actually work on this, is like, oh my God, give me a break. Like, what am I doing? You know, there's people, you know, facing the Basij somewhere in Kurdistan right now, in Zahedan, you know, whatever. Right. And somebody actually pointed that out to me and said, dude, you know, give yourself a break. You're throwing yourself into this, and you're, you know, doing as much as you can. Why are you reacting that way? But it is that feeling of nothing can possibly be enough, because it's so horrific. I mean, people are being executed. People are being, you know, collected on the street. People are being detained for the craziest of reasons, which we'll of course get into as we do every show. And even, you know, the idea of people warning those of us who are speaking out publicly, you know, be careful, you know, you don't. And when I went to Turkey and doing that, it just seems so silly, small to me compared to what a public figure like Taryn Ali Zusti and what she's done, and we'll get to that in a moment. So it's a combination right now, I'm finding, of people having a tough time, and I think there's some exhaustion. I think that all of the things, Dr. K was on the show 3 weeks ago, talking about insomnia. A lot of Iranians are not sleeping well right now around the world, even though there's this feeling of hope too, that this is, the change is coming, that revolution is afoot. It's a difficult time, and I think maybe not unrelated to that is this feeling of a bit of a creeping feeling of disbelief that maybe the revolution isn't happening, you know, and that's why I wanted to do that opening essay today about this being a marathon, not a sprint, and some perspective on how revolutions happen, and that you can't expect it all to sort of come in a package, you know, really quickly. But those are the feelings that I am that at least in my radius that I'm kind of energetically getting from people. Are you finding that, Peggy?
Oh yeah, I mean, I've talked about this idea of quote unquote burnout for months now. I mean, I felt it quite early on myself, because I think at the onset of this, well, first it was the uprising, and then, you know, everyone kind of came on board with the revolution. But at the onset of this, I think it was so, it was so fresh, for lack of a better term, and I think everyone was doom scrolling at a higher speed, and there was more news coming out from, you know, social media, and news coming from Iran, and pictures and images and this and that. And so I think we were so bombarded by it kind of early on that I felt that burnout quite quickly. And, you know, like you mentioned, I think it was a month or so into it, I had to take 2 or 3 days, and I just kind of shut off my phone one weekend. So I think, you know, it's been impacting us, and the longer this goes on, and you know, like you said, it's a marathon and not a sprint, it will be continuing for some time. We really need to understand this idea of, you know, looking at this information and you know, how are we being productive, receiving it, sharing it, you know, talking about it, all of that. So, you know, I definitely believe in that burnout.
Shaya, what have you been experiencing in terms of the conversations you've been having, or yourself, that is?
I mean, related to, like, as you said, it's marathon, it's not sprint. It just came to my mind, like, at the beginning of COVID, the virus, everyone they're thinking that, okay, next month is gone,
Right.
So but it took 2 years a new virus to, like, we can take over, and it's not completely gone. We are talking about a regime. It's like a virus for 43 years they are in the country, so
Yeah.
we have to give ourselves, like, passion and motivation, and it will be gone.
Are you seeing and hearing that deflation from people around you?
A lot, and even myself, like, at the beginning of the movement, I was writing songs, I was very active, but right now I think that, okay, I have to keep my energy. It's a long way, so
But the scary thing is that and maybe this is what makes it so daunting, is that we're now in a bit of a corner, because if we stop, we're giving up on, as I was mentioning in the essay too, you know, we're giving up on all of those people that, you know, who are, it's up to 20,000 now in jail, and we're giving up on the people, the kids whose names we've been screaming who've been killed, you know, murdered. We're giving up on a lot, you know, and so stopping is not an option. And at the same time, continuing is daunting, because yes, it is settling in that you don't, as you say, defang a despotic regime that has figured out how to rule with an iron fist for 43 years overnight. Just ain't gonna happen. It's really not Gaddafi, you know. In fact, they've watched all that happen in the region and go, okay, here's how we double down to make sure that doesn't happen for us.
Exactly. So I just wanted to mention what happens, or what's been happening, as you mentioned, that a lot of people are kind of losing hope, and, you know, they don't want to move forward anymore. I'm pretty sure that you're familiar with the stress responses, fight, flight, and freeze, right? So when the sympathetic nervous system is activated, when we are very angry, we go into the fight or flight mode, right? But when we are in fight or flight state,
just for people who are listening and don't know, haven't been in therapy like some of us for years, fight means to engage, to kind of fight back. Flight means run away from it.
Run away, exactly. But no matter what, in fight or flight, we think that we can. So we are basically moving forward, right? With whatever the threat or the danger is.
Right.
And in this case, it's a lot of them are real threat, and a lot of them are perceived threats, right? So, but what happens is we think that after a long time, when we are in fight or flight state, we are going to go back to the rest and digest, and, you know, just think that, okay, so we're just going to be fine, you know, again. But it doesn't happen. When we are in fight or flight state for a very long time, or when we are exposed to more stressors. Let's say a lot of us are not just involved in the protests in Iran. A lot of us have we are experiencing illnesses or family problems or financial problems, right? So that's the time when the nervous system, instead of going to the rest and digest state, it goes into the shutdown and freeze mode. And when we freeze, we have that state of mind that I can't anymore. We feel hopeless, we feel helpless, we feel stuck, we feel numb. And I think that that's what's happening with a lot of people right now.
Let's hit some of the points for our Roqe Roundtable before we get to our featured guests coming up, Awin, Tavakoli, and Mahsa Townshend. I mentioned Taroneh Ali Dousti. This is the arguably one of Iran's most famous actors, and she famously posted a photo of herself last month with no hijab, and many of us immediately, reposted it and shared it and said, this is really brave. It's interesting. I don't know who it was, but we had a couple of guests on who said, well, actually, she's kind of got impunity because she's so famous. They're not going to make an example of her. They're actually not going to do anything to her. Well, sure enough, she's now been arrested, and we don't know exactly what where this is going. But this has been big news in the Iranian community for the last couple of days.
Yeah, I mean, since news of her arrest came out, I think it was late Saturday, if I'm not mistaken, there's been an outpouring of, support and solidarity for her, concern for her safety. There was reports of, people from the arts community in Iran gathering in front of Awin prison, which is where she's reported to be being kept or held. So there was protests that we saw. We saw, obviously, all sorts of messages on social media. I think most famously we saw that viral video from director and actor Mani Haqiqi, which, I have to talk about for a moment.
Can we get to that?
Yeah.
But yeah, let me, I want to come to that. But first I want to just deal with the reaction to Taroneh, which has generally been, she's one of the brave souls who stepped up in such a big way that now maybe they are going to make an example of her. God forbid, in a way that we had thought maybe they wouldn't because she's too big a name,
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing to remember is, she's been one of those people who has kind of been vocal nonstop. It wasn't just that image that went viral. I think that was one of those pictures that ended up becoming something that everybody shared and a lot of people saw. But the reality is, she's been outspoken on so many different platforms at so many different times over the years, and not just, recently. So I think she's one of those people that, yes, her fame had helped her up to a certain point, but we see with this regime, I mean, there's unexpected.
And it's worth mentioning that she has made a conscious decision to stay in Iran. We have a mutual friend who had put us in touch a few years ago, and Taroneh was asking me about coming to Canada, and maybe it's something she was considering, and then she decided that she's going to stay in Iran. Right. And she's a very, very talented actor, could probably have a thriving business as an actor outside of Iran, but made that decision to stay, and even now, speaking out, made that decision to stay, and which of course is dangerous stuff. Sarah, you were saying something about the reactions that we have to someone like Taroneh Ali Dousti speak to the kind of pendulum swing of emotions that we feel, particularly anger that you see in the community. Tell me what you're talking about when it comes to her.
So when it comes to Taroneh and so many other people, I remember when I saw the news that she was detained and arrested. So I immediately remember the days that she was basically accused of wearing a hat or a headscarf or something on the red carpet. And I remember
when she was at those film festivals, like Cannes Film Festival. Yeah.
Exactly, Cannes Film Festivals. And she was attacked by so many people, right? And I was thinking that now that she, like, people are praising her and supporting her. And
she was attacked, as because she'd be considered to be kowtowing to the regime somehow by putting a headscarf on or something.
Exactly. So to me, I was thinking that this is what we have been observing since the start of the revolution, I would say. And we basically, it's in psychology, we call it cognitive distortion. Like, we see things through our cognitive distortions, like it's all or nothing thinking. It's the person is either good or bad, you know. This person is honest or not honest. This person is, you know, supporting or not supporting. Yeah. So there is no gray area, which I don't understand at all. And that has actually caused a lot of aggression, I would say, among people.
It's so confusing because maybe I'll talk about this with Mahsa Townshend too, because she's getting some backlash because she's a Republican and stuff. But, you know, we keep saying there's unity in the diaspora, and one of the beautiful things that's emerged from this revolution so far is this incredible unity. And somebody will say that, and then in the next sentence go, I hate that comedian. He made this joke that I disagree with, and he should be, you know. And you sort of go, whoa, wow, this is intense stuff. There's an intensity of feelings, and that leads to cognitive distortion.
And it's so quick. Sorry, not to interrupt you, but I think I've seen this happen on so many different occasions over the last couple of months, and it's almost like instantaneous. So it's exactly what you're saying with regards to Tarana, for example. I remember when she was at Cannes, and everyone was, you know, criticizing her. And fast forward, that was in the summer, I think, like early or May or June, something like that. And now look at this, you know, we're almost 6 months later, and probably those same people who were saying, you know, oh, she's with the regime and she's this and that, you know, things change. And I think it's what I find almost funny, for lack of a better term, is the speed in which, you know, we change our minds about people and people's actions and things like that. And I think it goes back to the conversations that we were having around the whole shaming idea, you know, months back, where individuals were being shamed 1 minute, and then the next minute, if they said, you know, a certain phrase, or if they posted a certain picture or something like that, then all of a sudden, not only were they not shamed, but they were now becoming heroes. So it's such a quick on and off. I mean,
exactly. Yeah, that's what has been happening. Even with me, like, I post something or a picture with somebody, and then I get attacked. Are you involved with this person? Why? And then they just, I'm just gonna unfollow you. Okay, unfollow me. Like, I don't understand. Like, not that I don't understand, I do. But again, that's the part that a lot of people, again, going back talking about anger, anger is like an iceberg, you know. We just see the anger on the top, but there are so many these other emotions underneath anger that trigger our anger. And it's just better, especially in our culture, actually, because we are used to, you know, showing our anger and be aggressive as kind of showing our power, right? So it's just easier to show our emotions as anger and attack people than showing vulnerability and saying that, oh, you know what, I feel so sad, or you know what, I feel so ashamed, or I feel so guilty that I'm not doing anything right now, or I just feel so embarrassed because I didn't know about all of this, you know. So it's
we need some sort of a helpful chart, to a grid to show us who we should really be angry at and not, you know. If they're enabling the regime in legitimate ways, we cast them out, but if they told a joke we didn't like, we, you know, slap them on the head a little bit and then go, okay, let's move on.
And I think one more thing to mention is that, you know, people are allowed to change their ideas about things, you know. I mean, I think it's hard because with the current situation you're on and with the regime, it's, you know, they're so horrible that I understand, you know, the anger and these feelings and all these feelings that you mentioned. But I think, you know, there's something to be said for people who maybe weren't following, or maybe didn't know, or weren't as educated, and things like that. It really does
depend. I've got to step in.
Because I mean,
I
agree,
you know,
but
it's like if Raisi comes out today and goes, actually, guys,
we're definitely not.
I was
punking
you. I'm actually with the, we're not going to say, okay, no problem, right?
No, but I have friends of mine who have lived here their whole lives, and we're not as involved with the Iranian community, and we're those people who, like you mentioned, they didn't like listening to news and have actually purposely removed themselves from the community and from following news because it's been so hard on them, because maybe they spent more time in Iran and things like that. And there are some names and figures and I'm not talking about big names like Raisi, but I don't know, a random actor or an author or this and that. And, they're just starting to understand what has been happening for the last 20, 30 years that they've left the country. And I think individuals like those, if they post a picture of someone who used to be associated with Nayak, for example, and they didn't know, and someone is attacking them and saying, oh, you must be with Nayak too, I think, there needs to be some compassion as well for situations like that.
It's a tough one. You mentioned Mani Haqiqi. This is the director who, it's funny because this video that he's posted in support of Tawhid Dosti that's been going kind of viral in the Iranian circles, I thought it was amazing. I was sure he wasn't in Iran if he posted that. I asked Shaya, and Shaya was like, no, he's in Iran. Tell us what he said and why it resonated so much for you.
Yeah, so the first part of the video, he basically is just expressing his concern for a friend of his, Tawhid Dosti, who's been, arrested, and he's saying that, he's concerned about her safety and hopes that wherever she is, she's safe. But really, it was the second part of the video that really resonated with me. And so he takes a couple of minutes to address the Minister of Culture and Islamic Guidance, who I think in Farsi is Wazir Farhang o Irshad Islami, if I'm saying that correctly. And so what had happened is, it seems like a couple weeks back, this individual had come out and I don't know if it was on TV or where he had said this, but he had kind of addressed the artistic community and said, we're going to put our full efforts and full force behind film festivals and things for the community, the arts community, and we want people in Iran to put on concerts and, make more movies, and the Fajr International Film Festival is going to be coming up, and this year we really want to support it, and was kind of making this case to the artistic community. And so Mani Hariri was talking to this person and kind of addressing his comments towards him and saying, you're the same person who for years and years has pointed a finger in our face and said, you can't do this, and put restrictions on this community and said all of these things. And now you're trying to plead to us. But the real question is, who from the artistic community is going to want to make movies in this climate, in this country, with this regime?
Right.
Which one of the citizens in Iran are going to attend these events? And he was kind of asking these pointed questions as if he was addressing this individual, and I just found it so moving.
Is he not going to get... How is he not arrested, Shah?
He probably will be arrested.
You think he'll be arrested?
Yeah. I think so. I mean, based on the...
With that video?
Well, I mean, all Tawhid Dosti did was take off a hijab. I mean, he's like saying all this stuff. I kind of thought, wow, if he's in Iran...
Yeah. I think it's his third video since the Uprising, which got viral. And in his first video, he said that I won't leave Iran. I'm gonna stay here, and I'm gonna defend my country. So,
just to talk about a few things that are happening this week before we wrap up the Roqe Roundtable, there's another round of nationwide strikes that I guess began today, right? So what do we know about what's happening so far in Iran?
Well, we've seen some videos and reports come out from Iran today. There was some employees at, I think it's industrial and operational units within the oil sector, and it's mostly within the south of Iran that we've seen these videos and reports come out of. So we saw, again, walkouts, strikes from individuals in those sectors. There's also reports of Iranian teachers who staged a sit-in, I think, to show their solidarity and kind of condemn the killing of so many students. So we saw that as well. We've seen videos of, I think there was a specific street, and I can't recall the name right now, but a street in Tehran where there was a huge, almost like walking protest. There was just a large group of individuals who had kind of gathered, and they were walking down this street chanting and asking for freeing political prisoners. So we're starting to see those same videos coming out from Iran, and we've seen grassroots campaigns for calling these strikes. And they started today, and they're supposed to last for 3 days leading up to Shab Yalda.
Right. Now, Shab Yalda, Sara, what should we be doing with Shab Yalda? Please tell. Give me the party line on what. I mean, are we supposed to?
What's the plan?
Yeah, what is the plan? I wasn't sure. This is Shab Yalda is not usually a huge celebration, but I've been to parties before that were Shab Yalda parties, so I'm not sure.
Jian, you know that a lot of Iranians are just waiting for an opportunity to, have huge parties.
Yes.
And Shab Yalda could be one of that.
I see.
But generally speaking, Shab Yalda is it's kind of like a more intimate family, close friends gathering and just having a kind of a quiet night, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, and it has some historical context in terms of going back to Persian culture and the reading of poetry and like you said, gathering with family.
It's actually one of the things that the Islamic Republic denounces, right?
That's right. Well, I mean, I wouldn't say actually denounces, but I mean, they would never come out and say that explicitly. But yes, I mean,
they're not big fans of.
That's
Shab
right.
Yalda,
I mean, we've seen this regime kind of, over the past 40 some odd years, continue to push this agenda of celebrating sadness and more Islamic rooted celebrations, for lack of a better term. So anything that has, ties to Persian culture and heritage, like Nowruz even, or Yalda, of course, we don't see them being in support of it in the same way. So,
or Charshanbe Suri.
Exactly.
Shab Yalda is usually, this is a night that is on December 21st. It's the winter solstice.
Winter solstice, yeah. So 21st or 20th, depending on the year, I think.
And Shaya, what is your position on what we should be doing for Shab Yalda?
I'd say 100% we have to celebrate Yalda. And again, as Pega said, this regime for 40 decades, they just propaganda grief ceremonies, and with grieving we cannot beat them. We have to energize ourselves. By sadness they would beat us, They're just
Interesting. In terms of things that have been happening, there are ongoing demonstrations. There were demonstrations around the world on the weekend. There was one in Los Angeles that we'll talk to Mahsa about coming up in a little bit. There was a big demonstration here on Sunday, but there was on Saturday here in Toronto, there was also a giant car rally that we both took. Did you take play? You were there too,
yes,
Sara? Okay.
Yes.
All three of us were involved in that, and it's not the most environmentally friendly form of protest, but I thought it was an inspired idea.
It was.
Which was we all take our cars and occupy a major artery, the biggest street in Toronto, the biggest street in the world, actually the longest street in the world, Yonge Street, which goes right down the middle of Toronto. If you're from Canada, you'd know this. And so we met north of the city, and then the hundreds and hundreds, I don't know what the final count was, it was probably about 1,000 cars or something, and many of us put giant signs, Mahsa Amini, or the Shida Khoshid flag, or the Women Life Freedom sign. I had a big one on my car and drove down there, and it was a you couldn't miss it. The holiday shoppers were certainly going to see what's so good. I just want to give a shout out to the organizers of that, a group called it's a non-political, non-partisan group called Stand United for Iran that I thought did a really good job of organizing that. It's a strange thing to organize, but they had flags for everybody, and they had this car rally.
Yeah, I mean, when I first saw the posters on Instagram, I was thinking, what are the logistics of this going to be? How are they going to organize this? And I had all these questions. And anytime there's any sort of a rally or demonstration or protest or whatever else, and I think this goes back to university days and the chaos that I would see ensue with protests and demonstrations and things like that, a part of me is always worried about the logistics of things and how they're going to manage and what it'll mean for people in those surrounding areas. And I think with the car rally, that was kind of forefront of my mind. But they did such a great job with volunteers, with handing out, kind of unified posters and things like that, so that anyone who was seeing these cars and seeing what was going on, they could really make out what the purpose was and what it is that we were protesting or trying to get across.
And I've got to say, I don't know if you guys experienced this, but being in the car first of all, driving alongside others who had the flags, and it was fun. Everybody was sort of giving a nod and a high five and all that. But non-Iranians and non-people participating were also honking as they would go by, or waving as you drive by them and stuff. So it felt like there was a lot of support, and that
For sure.
that obviously was energizing. It was the longest traffic jam I think I've ever been in. It took about 4 hours for us to drive, a few blocks.
Stretch that would typically take like 10 minutes.
But it was a really strong showing in I mean, the Toronto community is definitely there. If it didn't feel disrespectful, I would be making some jokes about this. Like, nothing says revolution to protest like driving your Mercedes. Not me, but
the amount of white cars.
You have a Mercedes, don't you?
No.
Well, it's one of those kind of cars that you drive.
It is white.
Iranian
I will
cars.
admit, it is a white car.
I mean, like, nothing says that. Yeah,
but I have
let's
to say
support the poor folks of Iran with our gas guzzlers.
From some of the people was amazing too. Yeah. I mean, a couple of things I saw that really stood out. God, I mean, like there was this truck or like a flatbed, and they had created these like nooses and like wooden kind of I guess breakdown of like I don't know what to call it, but it was just it looked so profound. And to have, I was thinking someone who maybe doesn't know as much what's going on, if they were to see that, I can't see any way in which they wouldn't stop and say, okay, what is this? What's going on? Yeah. And to make something that garners that level of attention, I thought was amazing. And for all that we say about deflation and people feeling tired and whatever, it continues to be. I mean, fast, or reverse the tape back to 4 months ago. Could you imagine in cities around the world, look at the last 7 days, Sydney, Australia, 10,000 people, Oslo, big one in LA on the weekend, Montreal, there were thousands in the street, here in Toronto. Could you imagine, and with proud with Iranian flags, not the current Iranian flag of the Islamic Republic, of course, but it's a pretty amazing thing to be part of.
It is. It's like, to be honest, I didn't even, like, I knew, but I didn't really realize how big the community is. Like when the first protest that we had, the rally with 50,000 people, I was just so impressed. And I think that going back to it's a marathon, not a sprint. We should really keep doing what we're doing, but at the same time, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to practice self-care. We have to have these. We have to get support from the community, from our friends, from our families. Like, again, going back to like celebrating Yalda. Why not? This is what we really need to kind of relax our nervous system and regulate our nervous system to be able to fight.
It's just so hard when you really get into the mindset of what the reasons why people are being. We have a dear friend, Shailene, who's in Istanbul right now, and I don't know, as of today, last time I spoke to her was on the weekend, but it's been 25 days now. She has not heard anything from her brother, who's a poet who was arrested. The family's heard nothing, and it's really scary stuff and sad stuff. A funny note on this thing about seeing the crowds. I'm so used to now seeing these images of the Iranian crowds, the amazing overhead shots of. I saw these amazing crowds in Buenos Aires, like millions of people on the streets, and I was like, "That's not the right flag, though." Oh, right. Messi, the Argentina won the World Cup.
That's correct.
That was a pretty impressive crowd that they had in Argentina. But it's like, that doesn't look like, which version of the Iranian flag are they? This is a blue and white one that's got stripes.
It's almost like I associate crowds now to the ongoing revolution, and that's it.
That's right.
If there's any other crowd anywhere, it just doesn't register.
Thank you.
You know what? Actually, Jian, at the rally yesterday or on Saturday, there was a car with a flag, with the Argentinian flag, right? And my mind was so into our rally and our country, and I kept looking, I'm like, what is that? Is it with us? Like, what are they trying to show? And I was like, is this Jewish? What is this? And I'm like, oh my goodness. Matt was like, that's Argentinian flag.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my God. Okay.
Although I did notice a disproportionate number of Iranians claiming Messi as what, you know, I mean, it's like Freddie Mercury. Like, if can we find some lineage of his, like, Messi khodemun dige? Like, it was like there's so many fans of Argentina. I think just below Germany, it's probably up there on the list for a lot of, and maybe Brazil, a lot of Iranian football fans are big fans of Argentina. And it was, of course, lovely to see the
We've
greatest
got
of
one
all
here,
time.
right, Shia? You were pretty happy about that win.
Yeah.
It was Shia running around with the Argentinian flag in the middle of our rally
one
the other day.
One Argentinian
That's
flag.
right. That's right. Folks, we have our documentary is on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roqe Media. It just came out last Thursday. Check it out there in its entirety. You can see clips from it on our Instagram page and elsewhere. But the revolution from the backyard of Iran, conversations with Iranians in Istanbul from that close proximity to Iran who are supporting the revolution. We're getting some really, really wonderful comments about this and interesting comments on all of our platforms. The revolution from the backyard of Iran, now posted at youtube.com/Roqe Media. Thank you, Sara. Thanks for being part of the Roqe Roundtable. It's really nice to have you here. Sara Rahimi, make sure to follow her on her social media platforms. We'll put a link to her from any description, from the description on any platform you're listening to us on right now. Thank you, Shia, and thank you, Pega. We'll see you on the other side. We are coming to you on roqemedia.com. It's there that you can link to all of these platforms. We are on our ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. So we're coming to you on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, CastBox. If you like to see your visuals with Roqe, switch over to YouTube. And if you like your Roqe descriptions and bulletins in English and in Persian, check out our Telegram channel. You can subscribe on any of those platforms. And our website, roqemedia.com, is where you can actually support us by pressing the Support Us button. Let's get to our first guest. We're going to go to Zurich, Switzerland. Awin Tavakoli is a lawyer, a business advisor, and a community builder. She is the founder and CEO of a boutique firm based in Zurich, Tavakoli Advisory Switzerland, where she provides tailor-made solutions and advice to international clients. She was born and raised in a Kurdish family in Tehran and pursued her education in Switzerland. She has been very active in the last 3 months when it comes to the revolution, and she is going to help us navigate the waters of these political guardianships we've heard about. Awin Tavakoli joining me right now from Zurich, Switzerland. Hello.
Hi, Jian. Good to be with you again. Thank you for the invite.
Always good to have you on the program. How are you holding up? You posted something yesterday saying you feel 10 years older than you did 3 months ago. How has this been for you?
Yeah, I said actually not me personally, but some of us, many of us, because I hear it from so many people. And at the beginning, I just thought it's only me, that I felt like the pressure, the stress, the sadness, sometimes even the joy, the energy, such mixed feeling that we have gone through for the past 3 months. I just thought at the beginning it's only me, but I was receiving so many messages and sometimes even calls or voicemails, and people who were saying these times have been so intense that these 3 months actually felt like 30 years.
Yeah.
From the shift that so many of us went through, not only with the paradigm shift, even maturity, evolution, sadness, the breaking under pressure, the stress, and the load of pressure of the news, good and bad. I mean, of course, maybe 10% good and 90% negative, bad, loss of beloved people, young souls, innocent souls. And this has brought me really to go deep a little bit also into myself and see, oh my God, what has happened inside of me. I realized it as I was outside a couple of days ago, and I was seeing Christmas decorations everywhere, and people were having glue wines and shopping, and say, oh my God, Christmas is right in the corner.
I know,
and I didn't even see it coming.
Yeah. For Iranians around the world, I think we're feeling like we're in some kind of bubble. It does seem everything seems foreign to me in the same way. I sort of go, oh yeah, it's Christmas. People are having parties, and not Iranians, and it's a bit of an eye opener to sort of go, okay, we're in the middle of something else as a diaspora, as a global community. You're a business person and you're a lawyer, and you're always quite busy, but I, as somebody who follows you, I've seen that you've been really consumed, as have many of us, in talking about the revolution and wanting to do your part. Has that been a lifestyle switch for you in terms of what you've just literally been doing day to day for the last 3 months?
Totally. That's actually what I wanted to say, and I'm very happy that you somehow maybe read my mind. Jian, I think for many of us, I don't say for all of us, because there are some people in the diaspora and also in Iran that they are not really so engaged. Mm-hmm. It's okay. We cannot always expect 100% of a nation to feel and act and think the same. But for many of us who are so engaged and also so consumed, as you mentioned correctly, we had, as I said, a total shift in our priorities, in our even personalities, character-wise, and also lifestyle, and also with my work, etc. Things have totally changed. I had total different plans for my last quarter of the year, and exactly, the outbreak of revolution was just mid-September. So as people go back to school or just pursue the last few months of the year to wrap up their plans or their agenda and getting ready for a new year. And for me personally, I don't want to talk for everyone. For me personally, the whole thing changed. So I had to swipe up everything to the side and say, wait a minute, let's adjust focus. Yeah. And things are different.
I hear you, sister. I mean, there's certainly people who have said to me in recent days, for example, why are you spending so much time on this? Is this, you're really, really focused, and it's impossible for me to think of not doing this. And I don't, like you said, begrudge somebody who doesn't want to spend all of their time on this necessarily, but it really doesn't feel like an option to me. I one of the reasons I was really happy to have you on today is because I really want someone to give us a bit of an explainer on these political sponsorships, political guardianships. So let me get to that. But before we do, you've said something recently. You've said freedom is a collective right, not an individual right. Hence, it becomes reality only if practiced and maintained by all of us. It seems kind of self-evident, but I want you to just untangle that. Tell us what you mean by that.
I've been inspired actually by Martin Luther King, as he was also using that similar statement in one of his prominent speeches. And also by one of my favorite philosophers, Immanuel Kant. And also it goes back much, much, much earlier. But it has been also inside of me, not only inspired by those prominent people that I just mentioned, but also something individual for myself, individual perspective, and also the way of my thoughts and my feelings that I know, and it's proven for us human beings as social animals, as long as we are not living and loving and dying on one lonely island, we need to practice also the birthrights and those core values in a collective manner. Because, I cannot be free in a prison cell. I cannot practice my freedom in my own home as long as nobody else is there that I can come to to interaction or to maybe collaboration or to conflict or whatever we want to see as I said, as social animals. We are somehow, it is inevitable to be in contact and in connection with other people. As I said, we're social animals, so we don't live an individual life in, let's say, loneliness, If we don't want to do it, then we are somehow obliged to respect other people's freedom beside ours.
Right.
Because I remember, I think I know which speech you're referring to, which was actually in the beginning of the revolution. It was one of my talks in front of the mayor house here in Zurich. It was a rainy day, and I have, I think, my Kurdish headband as well. And people were telling me, yeah, it is Iran. It's too far away. It's Middle East is always subject to crisis, etc. I said, you cannot say something is too far away, because philosophically, socially, culturally, historically, scientifically, however you want to discuss this and analyze this, whatever happens in another corner of the world, it will have its impact and effect also in this part of the world.
Yes.
Whether you want to talk business, whether you want to talk, as I said, historically, socially, culturally, it will have its effect. And you cannot say, oh, I'm living in this free country, so why should I contribute to the freedom of other people in other countries? Yeah, because afterwards we will see people who are, let's say, escaping from their countries or moving to the other countries. This problem is a collective problem.
Right. Right. And the reverse is true too, which is that, as many people have been pointing out, if freedom or change comes to a significant country like Iran in a significant geopolitical area of the world, it's going to have a ripple effect on all the countries around it, and in fact the entire world. Like, this is what I try to say. It sounds like hyperbole when we say it, but this revolution is not just about Iran. It can change the world, right?
Jian, I mentioned that also, I think it was mid-October, as I was invited to the Swiss national TV, and I mentioned that actually in a podium that we had with a few other experts as well, that they were saying, yeah, Iran has been so isolated, so it cannot affect other areas. And I said, come on. I mean, let's not be naive. You just said in the neighboring countries or in the region, and I was happy that you said in the world. That was my statement, that I said, it is not an Iran problem. It is not a Middle East problem. It's a world problem. Either we want it or not, it's a global problem. Now that we see that Iran is amidst of a crisis, if we do not contribute, if we do not help those people, we will see the whole crisis is going to also be contagious to the other parts of the world as well. You know, if we want it or not, Iran has a strategical, geographical position. Historically, it has been always of high relevance for other regions, and also culturally the same. Business-wise, we have 80 million in Iran and we have 8 million in diaspora. So literally, these government or this system has built a second Iran outside of Iran. Yeah. So we cannot somehow neglect or ignore the influence and the impact of the Iranians in and outside of Iran in the whole world. So yeah,
but as well as it was pointed out by a couple of people in our documentary that we just did in Turkey, in a country like Turkey, where obviously there is more freedom, social freedom, etc., cultural than Iran, but there is a level of suppression as well. Even if on the face of it, the Turkish government or regime isn't friends with the Iranian one, they see this revolution as a potential threat as well. It's the threat of a good example, you might say. It's the threat that if freedom comes to Iran, that people in Turkey will agitate for those similar freedoms that they actually currently don't have. So that ripple effect can be powerful, and this notion of freedom as a collective right. I mean, I don't want to go too far in the rabbit hole on this, and this will seem very elemental for students of philosophy out there. So forgive me for that, but it's so interesting. Like exactly what you're saying. You need the cooperation of others, of a community, for freedom to exist. You can't say I am free in a vacuum. You need the chips need to fall all around you for that freedom to actually exist. You need that cooperation, in which case it's probably the most powerful argument for why everyone should be on board for this revolution. When somebody sort of says, well, what good is it for me to be part of this, or I'm busy, or I've got stuff to do? This is what it comes down to, right? That if we're not doing this together, it's not going to happen.
Actually, the reason that I had that statement that day, because I heard it so many times. Yes, Switzerland, neutrality, Europe, too far away. We have our own problem, Ukraine, Russia war. Now we have inflations. We have, and I was like, wait. There are sometimes obligations. There are rights that can be practiced and be successful and sustainable only in a collective manner. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You cannot then think, okay, when Iran already succeeds, then we can become business partners or we can come to your countries. No, unless you also contribute to our revolution. Yeah, then you're most welcome. Then you can do business with us. Then we will provide you this and that opportunity. And then that's a different match. And then you won't feel like you're just coming for a free lunch. You feel like you have done something as well, because we are also contributing to the freedom in these countries by giving our shares. I mean, you just mentioned that I had my education here. Actually, it has been my second education, because as most of us Iranian diasporas, we have two lives. So I had my first education and career and work and everything actually in Iran first. And then as I came here, I started from scratch. Law was what I started here. And so I was already 26 as I came to Switzerland. So this has been something that we have contributed to these countries as well, by way of putting our intellectual values, by studying, education, working, and providing value. So I'm sure if one day we succeed, I mean, I don't say if, I say when, because I'm sure it will happen. When we succeed, and even 20% of the Iranians in the diaspora decides to go back to their country, I tell you, the Western countries will have a problem.
Let me, speaking of contributing, let me ask you about one of the ways non-Iranians, some non-Iranians have been contributing. This, a fortnight ago, a couple of weeks ago, even, I don't think that in our lexicon, in our language, we'd heard these terms, political sponsorships and political guardianships, or patronage of that kind, very often. And now there's a lot of talk about it. It's emanating from Europe and from EU countries, exactly where you're located. This idea of high-profile or political actors in Europe, and I suppose potentially around the world, sponsoring or being the guardians of those who are put on death row in Iran. Can you, in a very brief and basic way for us, explain what this idea is and where it came from?
Yes, sure. I mean, first, as a lawyer, let me correct 2-3 terms that you just used. It is not about sponsorship, because when we mention sponsorship, people right away think about financial stuff as well. So that is not the case. It is pure guardianship. It is sarparasti. And it's like in the German term also they call it Patenschaft, which is somehow the same term if we use it in English as godmother or godfather of someone. So it is not.
Can I push back though, as a wordsmith myself? I would just say that sometimes, maybe not, maybe it's a North American thing. Sometimes we use the word sponsor. Say in Alcoholics Anonymous, they talk about sponsors as somebody who is a support person rather than. But you're right. It could be confused with financial, and that's not what this is about. I'll try and use guardianships from now on. So what is the idea? What are political guardians?
It has started actually, it has a history of almost 20 years, and not in the EU, but in Germany. Germany has been playing a very bold role in this concept and in practicing guardianship, as they call it, politische Patenschaft, political guardianship, for the political prisoners, especially like artists, political activists in prison, that they have that they lose their voices because of the tyranny. And we see now it is the same case now in Iran that is happening. How it became bold, we have actually a very active group of Iranian in diaspora in Germany, that they have been doing an awesome job also raising awareness also with this IGFM. It's an organization for human rights in Germany. And they have been raising awareness with them and trying to position actually this crisis in Iran, and especially after the second execution in Iran happens, say, you see, this these people are serious. So, and we have now another more than at that time 80,000, and now we're talking about almost 20,000 people in their custody. That this could be a threat for each and every one of them, especially those that they are being, charged by waging war against God or corruption on earth in somehow like self-imposed or fake trials, unfair trials, without even having access to the lawyers and the lawyers of their choice, which is actually totally like against not only local but also international laws, that if the charge is so high, if it's about your life, first of all, you need to have the possibility also to go against that verdict. Second of all, you have to have access to the lawyer of your choice, because it is not about a fine or to be sued on a trial cost or something. It's about your life. I mean, life and death penalty. You need to have all the privilege of a judiciary system. And
okay, but the obvious question is, how does a well-meaning, albeit well-meaning, and wonderful sage person in Germany, who declares himself the political guardian of Tarone Ali Dousti, or somebody who's been jailed in Iran or even put on death row, how does that person help from outside of the borders?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And as the term is saying, it's political guardianship. So the best people who can take this function or this role are those who have like a kind of political function in their country, especially if they have a seat in the parliament, in the Senate. So if they're a parliament member, then they have this privilege that they can use their political privilege to get in touch easily with the embassies, with the ambassadors, or with the consulates of those countries. If we know in Iran, some of the countries, I think including Canada, still do not have their embassies working in Tehran since a couple of years. But that is actually the function of these people as political guardians. So the best role that they can have is when they are a member of the parliament, for example, because otherwise celebrities or a lot of influential people, they could take on the role as well, but that political privilege is not granted to them. And especially these political guardians, almost 99% of them, they get also a protection and also special services from the foreign ministry of their country. So that is actually giving them a lot of power to move forward. And one thing that is very important for your audience and also for whoever is just listening to this afterwards is that we have to distinguish political guardians from attorneys or lawyers or legal representations. That has nothing to do with that. They can be also people with legal background, but that's not what they do for these people in the prison. They are not allowed to take on their legal representatives, because that needs also the consent of the person and also the registration in the judiciary of in Iranian judiciary for the trial. So that is not the case. It is about taking care of the case of a person who is in a specific, critical, sensitive situation legally, especially now, as we know with our cases in Iran, because of Moharaba or something, they are in execution risk. So that is imminent life risk. That person, if I may add 2 sentences, and that person as political guardian, he can or she can start taking over the case, study the case, ask documents to be delivered to her about the station or the stadium of the legal procedure, the trial, who is the lawyer in Iran, whether it's a just or let's say a lawyer of the choice or like state attorney, etc., or whether the trial has been going on in a fair model, whether that person had the possibility to visit the family or the close people to himself, whether he or she is in good health condition. As we know, most of our lovely innocent kids in the prisons, they are suffering from systematic rape, torture, abuse, and so on and so forth. So these are the things that person in his or her role as a political guardian can and must and will get those information from Iran.
This is, I mean, it's amazing. It's empowering when you see these significant political actors, MPs, from European countries, Germany, etc., being these guardians, but becoming these political guardians, bringing awareness to these cases. But and not to pour any water on it, but is there any evidence that? I mean, this is the back and forth that we have, right? Your colleague, I say colleague, she's also a lawyer, Elika Laban, was on last week and talking about the importance of why we say their name, because it affects, it can potentially save their lives, etc. And I kind of go back and forth on this. On the one hand, I go, yes, absolutely, and I'm playing my part to say their name, etc. And on the other hand, I think this unethical group of murderers in Iran, these mullahs, this theocracy, is there any evidence that they give a flying F about any of this, right? I mean, is it really going to make a difference to them that some MP in Germany says, no, don't do anything to too much,
Jian, the first evidence is that after our awesome Majid Rahnavard, no execution has taken place anymore. So that is one glimpse of hope already. And it was exactly the time that this political now I'm saying sponsorship as well, guardianships became viral. And then they officially announced those on the social media and the parliaments and started corresponding letters and asking for evidences and well-being of these people in their custody as well. So that is one evidence, because this regime, as you said, I mean, there's no guarantee for nothing. They break and violate their own laws, their own Sharia laws. We saw that last week. There were a couple of those ancient mullahs were waking up out of the ashes and saying, oh, actually, this was not real muharaba, and you just killed those two young guys, right. With false charges, etc. So it means they are even in paradox with their own laws or with their own Sharia rules and regulations, etc. So that is one point. I always tell people, please do not see now this concept of political guardianship as a guarantee to stop these execution waves. But it has a very heavy weight and power. First of all, you mentioned to raise awareness. Second of all, to push and exercise more political pressure. Because, as I said, these are politicians. They have a voice in their parliament. When they announce their next, let's say, godchild or prisoner in Iran in their guardianship, they are announcing it in official letters in the parliament or in the Senates. So that
and the regime in Iran will therefore be actively defying not just the rights of the Iranian that they're murdering, but defying the will of somebody in the West who's in a prominent political position.
It is not the will, Jian, it is their image, because their image is already, scratched and broken and, damaged brutally and drastically, which is good. And that has been what we have been trying to do in the diaspora to remove or to jeopardize their legitimacy and their credibility amongst Western or, let's say, international community, not only Western countries, because we're talking about the international community. So that is one thing. And that has been actually very important for them, because they have been sending their representatives or their people everywhere in the UN or in different commissions and in assemblies around the world to say, our country is a country of Golobolbol, women are doing awesome. We are actually great. And these people who are coming to the streets, they are powered and supported by some Western evil countries, etc. But now, through this kind of stuff, every guardian who is coming and take that word, they cannot be all liars and supporters of evil, etc. So each and every one of us, that's why I'm telling to people, every day that we are taking a new guardian or a new guardianship, because some of them are taking multiple people or cases, I tell to our people or in my community, in my Instagram and Twitter, I say every day when we are getting one new guardianship, it means we are getting one more voice, one more person in our team Iran. That's very important. But just to give also a realistic view to this concept is there is no guarantee for nothing, because we are dealing with an evil, barbaric terrorist regime, and they know how to violate their own laws, international laws, treaties, conventions, and everything. That has been their job for the past 44 years. So we cannot expect them to respect everything. One last thing is you asked for evidence. Real case evidence was actually one of my Instagram lives, as I had with one of the guardians of our beloved people in prison, which has been this prominent case of Mahan Sadrat, who was sentenced to death and who was expecting to be executed in a few hours the night that that lady from Hamburg in Germany took his guardianship. And the same night, the early morning afterwards, this post was coming up and getting viral that Mahan Sadrat didn't get executed, and his verdict has been declared void. And now the trial has been closed, that trial, the old trial, and now they decided to reopen a trial because they thought they have made a mistake. You know, that has been what they have been telling. So I saw a story of his local lawyer in Iran that he posted, and we can understand, maybe he was under pressure and, you know, they're living there, that he shared this story that the suspension of the execution of Mahan Sadrat had nothing to do with political guardians and any influence of the Western countries. It was a very internal case and affair. So, which is fine, we don't care. What was important for us was Mahan Sadrat is still breathing.
Yes.
Although he's still in prison, and many others who were supposed to be executed the past days, because this political guardianship is extremely new, but it's expanding as hell, and we're very happy about it. And I personally have been working so intensely on it as hell.
It's a really powerful idea. Thank you for the education on it, Awin. And as I say, it's always good to have you on the program. Before I let you go, let me, you know, since we had you on at the beginning of the uprising, or in those first 2 or 3 weeks after the killing of Mahsa Amini, now we're 3 months in, or maybe even a little bit more than 3 months in now. Let me just get your sense of where we're at. You know, I was saying in the roundtable just now, before you came on, that I was speaking to somebody who's been actually a very prominent, you know, activist for the cause in social media, etc. On the weekend, talking to him, and he was, you know, he was, I guess, feeling a little deflated, getting a little disheartened, and sort of saying, well, there isn't millions of people in the streets. What if this isn't going to happen? And I was trying to, you know, prop him up and say, look, this is a process. This takes time. This is, but you know, there is you said earlier, there's 10% good news and 90%, you know, this negativity that we hear about, and certainly the executions have created a chill. There's no shortage of people that you hear from in Iran, or that go and come from Iran, that say, well, I didn't see much going on in the streets. Tell me where you're at on this. Where you think we're at in terms of the progress and possibility with this revolution?
I said 10% and 90%, yes, correct. And those 10% were like the progresses that were made. But why? Actually, there were much, much more than only 10%. But the pressure and the load, the heavy load of the negative ones, as losing people, hearing about those abuses, the tortures, the unjust, the terror. So the load, actually, the realistic part, we could say actually 50-50. We have positive and negative achievements. We have had awesome achievements actually throughout the past 3 months. But the pressure and the sadness of those negative sides of loss of those young lives, the pressure on those families, the violence, the lies, the terror, the abuse, the torture, the systematic kidnapping of people, bringing so many people into custodies, and many of them you don't even know where they are. A lot of them, they have done actually nothing than maybe writing a graffiti on a wall or something, and now they have been charged with like corruption on earth or something. So what I meant with this 90% was rather the load, but not the realistic negative positive.
Okay.
I would say realistically, if we put the achievements on one side and let's say I wouldn't say the losses, but the negative, the sadness, the stress and pressure on one side, then we actually have 50-50, because looking at like the exiting Iran from, dismissing Iran from the Women's Rights Council in the UN, the resolution of the UN a few weeks ago with regards to like fact-finding commission, etc., asking for people for their people to come back or to leave Iran now today by Belgium. Last month was Netherlands. A couple of weeks after that was another country. And just, so we have seen that a lot of positive achievements or progresses have been taking place as well. And also the unity, the solidarities that we have attracted, not only from some of the other countries, foreign countries, I don't say Western countries just to be more inclusive in this case, but the Iranians themselves. We have seen how much closer we have come to each other. I personally had never been in touch with Iranian communities outside or so, but nowadays I have got to know a bunch of awesome people that we are now working closely together to bring this movement to push it forward. And that is why I say, if we want to look at it like this, actually positive, negative are somehow on the same level. But the sadness of those things is more than the happiness.
But there's no question. No one would disagree that the goalposts have been moved. There's no question about that. Both inside out and outside of Iran. But in the last 3 months, reformism, for example, that some people were still entertaining, a few months ago, has become something that for most people is a real dirty word now, and hopefully a pushback against any of that with the American administration, for example. But regardless of how the goalposts have moved or what we see as those positives, do you still believe that this is the revolution, that this is the moment? That would be the question that, my friend, as I referenced on the weekend, is the one that's bringing up this kind of skepticism. I assume he's not alone. If somebody I meet is saying that, there's probably a lot of people thinking that.
Jian, I totally understand that, and I totally can feel and relate to what your friend has been maybe expressing or feeling as well. I get sometimes that fear as well, or that insecurity. I say, oh my God, just please do not let me think of that 1% or that 0.5% that this will not going to be the case. So sometimes we're human. That's normal that we get that fear, and that's okay. But I started to really shift my mindset. I shared it also in my recent post after the 3rd month of the revolution, and I call it a revolution. I tell you also why. I mentioned that it took some time and took a lot of pressure and a lot of heartbreaks and tears and stress for all of us to understand and to accept that this is a marathon and not a sprint.
Yes.
Because I personally am a very impatient person. I've been a sprinter myself, so I love speed and I hate everything that comes on my way. And my all effort would be just focused on removing that barrier. But now we all must. There is no way around it. We need to accept and understand that this has been a brutal system that has been expanding its evil arms all around the world with billions of dollars of investment and corruption and terrorism financing worldwide, not only Iran, nationwide, or not only Middle East wide, around the world for 44 years. We cannot. It would be super unrealistic, or it wouldn't be a revolution. It would have been maybe a reform if we would expect for this to happen within weeks or months. So we all need to somehow really occupy ourselves with whatever measures and aids or shields that we need to. I personally am talking for myself as well, because I have cracked under pressure a few times myself, also emotionally, physically, mentally. And I told myself, look, if you want to push through this, if you want to be all the way, and if you want to be there when it happens, you need to take care of yourself as well.
Yeah.
And now we have created a group of accountability amongst the people that we are working closely together with the same mission and with the same purpose, for a lot of them not to lose their jobs, not to lose their relationships, not to damage their health, etc. And for myself as well. We said, let us come together, let us meet once a week for half an hour to hold each other accountability. Have we gotten enough sleep? Have we gotten healthy food to eat? Have we done exercise? Are we taking care of like some, maybe a little bit of also me times during the day for ourselves? Are we going to do maybe half an hour of group meditation together? Because this is a collective movement, and we cannot go alone. And that's why I think it is something that I can suggest also to whoever is listening to this, whoever is engaged with the heart and with the mind, physically, mentally. We need to take care of ourselves as well. But I believe it will happen. And that's why I told you also during our chat, I don't use the term if, I use the term when. So when we are there, I don't say if we are there, because if is always a if yes or if no. But when, it means the condition is there, but it takes us time, effort, and collaboration, huge collaboration. It's a teamwork. We see it. We have all become united, and it wouldn't work otherwise.
I really appreciate your words, and actually, it's funny. You should say it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's exactly the same expression I use, and as I pointed out earlier on this program too, that at this point. If we were to stop, it means we are abandoning those 20,000 people who have been jailed. It means we are abandoning the memory and the honor of all those kids who've been killed. It means we're abandoning the women who've been on the front lines of this. It means we're abandoning the students who are out there risking their lives demonstrating, and that's just not an option. So
and we're abandoning our dreams and our hopes as well. We are abandoning. And we are also disrespecting the whole effort, the emotions, the work, and the time, and the feeling that we have put into this, not only for the past 3 months, for the past years, because it has been a process. So it means it's not only about those who are now in the country, it's about ourselves as well. We may no longer be able to get back there. We may no longer be able to meet our beloved family members. I still have family. So some
of us haven't been able to do that for a long time, who still have family there. Awin Tavakoli, I so appreciate you. Thank you for doing this. Before you go, let me just remind people that if they want to learn more about this political guardianships and the ins and outs of that, you have a couple of great lives about this on your Instagram. People should check that out. We'll put a link to your Instagram in the description, so whatever platform you're listening to this on right now or watching it on, check out our description and you'll see Awin's link, and you can go check out her page, because it really is helpful on this stuff. Thank you for this, Awin.
Thank you too, Jian. It was a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
This dream I'm dreaming, won't you wake me up tonight? 'Cause this life I'm living doesn't really feel like mine. This strange dream I'm dreaming, if it ain't wrong, it don't feel right. Never thought you were leaving. I never thought I'd have to start again.
This is Roqe, episode 224. The Uprising, it's a marathon, not a sprint. For all things Roqe related, you can go to our website, roqemedia.com. roqemedia.com. All of our back episodes of this Uprising series are there as well, and our new documentary shot in Istanbul. Let's go to California next, and Mahsa Townshend, an Iranian-American real estate agent and social media enthusiast who has been using her online presence to increase awareness about the current situation in Iran. Right now, Mahsa Townshend joins me from Orange County, California today. Hello.
Thank you so much for having me, Jian.
Nice to have you on the show. Mahsa Townshend, you spoke out at a rally in Los Angeles on the weekend. There you were on stage. How was that for you?
It was amazing. It was a great opportunity, and I really appreciated the organizers contacting me and giving me an opportunity to speak. And these protests are incredible because you feel this warmth, this energy, this togetherness, and so it was a great experience. It was an honor.
I was gonna ask you about that. Actually, it's no secret that we've always known that there's a lot of Iranians in Southern California. But what has it been like for you integrating or finding the common links with your Iranian sisters and brothers in Southern California, in the LA area, in Orange County, in the last 3 months?
I think for me personally, as you know, my husband's American. I moved here when I was 10 in 91, and my personal memories of Iran were not good ones because of certain experiences that my family went through. And I think when I moved here, I actually disassociated, separated from my background, from my country in a lot of ways. It was to suppress memories that, the trauma of what I dealt with. And I associated all of that pain with Iran. And it wasn't until 3 months ago, until this revolution, until this feeling of togetherness, where I really reconnected with my roots.
Yeah, and you didn't just reconnect with your roots. You've been extremely active, tirelessly so, in terms of your posts and passionately so. Tell me how you would, how that shift has been for you in recent months.
It's a sense of responsibility that the young men and women in Iran, that could easily be me, that could easily be my brother. We were just able to get out of Iran. And so there's this deep sense of responsibility that I have to say something. I have to speak up because they need all the support that they can get, and we owe it to them.
You have been, some people have had some comments about this when it comes to you, where especially, I suppose, those who don't agree with you ideologically or your approach or whatever it is. But I remember about a month ago, somebody had written a post saying that you're calling you an overnight activist, something that you kind of, in a fun way, sort of embraced. You've even put it on your Instagram now. Explain to me, do you feel like you're an overnight activist, or do you take umbrage at that term? Does it somehow hurt you to be called that?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't offend me at all. I think it's just because you're new to something, or maybe nothing else had. This is a cause close to my heart. I'd spoken out about different things, over the past 20 years, or whenever we've had access to social media, but maybe not so outspoken. I didn't feel as passionately about anything else. And so I don't think there's any embarrassment in that. Yeah, that's why I put it in my bio, because it's better to be an overnight activist than to not speak out at all. And so I will embrace that and not pretend I'm something or someone I'm not. But I do think, one of the main reasons I put my political views in the forefront of my activism is to really hammer home this point that in the Iranian community, we have to put Iran first. And we have to come together from different backgrounds, different political stances, and say, we're united on this one issue, and that has to come first. The interest of Iran has to come first, and we will go against Republicans, we will go against Democrats, we'll go against anyone who's not in support of a free Iran.
What made, I'm going to ask you about that in a second, working with Democrats and Republicans, et cetera. What, just on this point of this being something triggering in you, that this was the moment where you really wanted to jump in the way you have. Can you describe what it was this time? it's no secret that this regime has been doing horrific things for years, and there were moments, the student uprising in '99, the Green Movement in 2009, Awin in 2019. What is it about this time? Was there a particular moment where you went, "Fuck, I'm in. This is what I have to dedicate myself to"?
So I actually, during the previous, actually not the previous administration, the one previous to that, I really spoke out against the JCPOA. I've actually gone back and seen messages or archived things. I was against the JCPOA. I was against any sort of reform with the Islamic Republic because, again, not saying that the people who weren't there, everyone has a different experience based on what their family went through in Iran, right? And so I always had this deep-seated disdain towards the Islamic Republic because of how it had done to my personal family. And so for me, it was very easy to be against it. So I spoke out against it. I think the reason it seems that my voice, or I'm becoming more active now, is because we're more united now, where instead of back when I was against the JCPOA, I was fighting other Iranians, right? Now we're all echoing the same sentiment. So it's making all of our voices seem more powerful.
One of the things that you've been doing is addressing the predictable consequences of the political leaders in your own area, something that you can actually do something about, the same way that we here in Canada try and speak out about our Canadian government. And you have these action items for elected officials, particularly those in California, but I assume across America. You spoke about them when you spoke at the rally in Los Angeles on the weekend. Can you give me a couple of them? Give me your thoughts on what people in the diaspora like yourself, other Americans, for example, who are listening to this right now, what you want them to hear, what you want them to do.
So any effort, whether it's at a city council level or state level or federal level, is a move into the right direction. Some are going to be symbolic measures. Obviously, city council members can't change federal law or push sanctions, but it pushes for awareness and educating the American public as to what Iranians are asking for and what they're fighting for. So that's why we go to the city council meetings. With regards to what this administration can do, it's really four major items. As we see oil strikers in Iran striking, what they're essentially doing is sanctioning themselves. What the United States can do and has done in previous administrations is specifically sanction the oil that Iran sells on a monthly basis. And that directly affects the revenue they generate to use to suppress their people. So we need to stop their revenue generating process, and that's sanctioning their oil specifically. The second thing is through the Global Magnitsky Act, we can sanction the supreme leader and other high-ranking officials directly. And the Global Magnitsky Act doesn't just seize their assets in the United States. It seizes their assets and their ability to borrow money from the World Bank. It's very, very powerful. So that should be the next thing. And again, both the first sanction I spoke about and the Global Magnitsky Act, these are already existing options for the United States. Yeah. So we don't need to put them into law. They already existed. We just need to actually enact them and work on them. We also need to...
Sorry, just to stop you for a second. On that second one, the Magnitsky Act, any idea why that is so difficult to get everybody to adopt?
It's actually adopted. It's an adopted law. We just need to add the supreme leaders to the supreme leader's name to it. There's a list of other dictators who are already on that list. Shockingly, no one from Iran's added to that list. And so it's a process. And again, I really just informed the public, hoping that people much more powerful than me can look into this. I actually talked about the Magnitsky Act probably 3 months ago. And I came across it on a Google search. And I would tell anybody who would listen that, and I actually had some followers talked to me about it, but no one on the mainstream was picking up on it. And I just saw Nazanin Boniadi post about it, and I was so excited because someone that is much more powerful than I am is also looking into it, and I'm hoping that something comes out of it.
There's been a lot of active folks who have been talking about it for a long time. For example, Kaveh Shahruz we had here, he was talking about it a couple of months ago, etc. But you're absolutely right. It seems, that's why I ask what the issue is, because it seems like a no-brainer, this right. kind of thing. But it also speaks to still the relative inaction, despite the words of some of our Western political leaders. Okay, get to 3 and 4. Sorry, I cut you off.
Well, 3 and 4 is really shutting down the Islamic Republic interest section in Washington, D.C. This is, we obviously don't have an Iranian embassy in the United States, but it's similar to one. And I think it's, again, a symbolic measure, really calling on our allies in Europe and Canada, all over the world, and asking them to expel the Islamic Republic diplomats. This is a request from the Iranian people, and because they want to attack the legitimacy of the Islamic Republic, and we need to support them in that effort. And then, what was the last thing that I spoke about? I think it was just shutting down the Islamic Republic intersection. Oh, and I can't believe I forgot this one. Once and for all, walking away from the JCPOA, not tabling it, not putting it on ice, but walking away from it and saying, this deal was flawed to begin with. It is not in the interest of the United States and the world and the Iranian people. And we need to just completely walk away from it.
I guess on that last note, especially, you have not been shy about expressing your disapproval or disappointment, maybe I should say, in the Biden administration, your current government, your president, et cetera, in the States. Why?
Actually, President Biden himself did something good when it comes to the JCPOA. In 2019, the previous administration, President Trump, added the IRGC, or designated them as a terrorist organization. At the beginning of this year, when they started negotiating on the JCPOA again, the Islamic Republic said, we're not coming back to the table until that designation is removed. All of the Republicans voiced their concerns and said, don't remove this designation. But so did 18 Democrats, who also voiced their concerns. And President Biden listened to them, and he didn't remove that designation. So he actually did something good earlier this year. Because he didn't remove that designation, we didn't re-enter the JCPOA. So I don't want to they might not be my favorite administration, but they did something right at the beginning. However, since then, he is doing exactly what the Obama administration did during the Green Movement. And we now know better. We know that was not the right course of action. And so we as Iranians need to not be shy about putting pressure on this administration and criticizing them. And I will say a lot of very famous big Iranian influencers are supporting this movement and just stopping shy of criticizing the Biden administration. And I think that is a mistake. We have to put Iran's interests first. It is not an election year. Criticizing the Biden administration doesn't mean that you're now a Republican. It just means we have to speak the truth and put pressure where it's necessary.
Yeah, when you say following the Obama's administration's footsteps, there are things that the Obama administration did that he himself now says, we could have done this better. We were wrong. So even Obama suggests that he wouldn't have followed in Obama's footsteps. Now that he's 12 years after the Green Movement, 13 years after seeing what the consistency of the horror that this Iranian regime presides over. You when you go to these city council meetings, what is the vibe like there, and what do you hear from these city councilors, and what do you hope to accomplish on a local level that can actually support I mean, if somebody says to you, which I'm sure somebody would, but okay, this is all great, but how are you really helping the kids on the front lines in Iran? What do you say to them in terms of going to a local city council meeting in Orange County or in Los Angeles?
Before I jump into that really quick, sorry, I want to add one more little nugget about this administration. Robert Malley and his position is extremely problematic. And a lot of Iranians, both in the diaspora and in Iran, are asking for his firing. And a representative by the name of Pat Fallon from Texas, a Republican from Texas, early November, formally asked the Biden administration for the firing of Rob Malley. And this is a great example that whether he's a Republican, independent, or Democrat, what he's saying serves the interests of the Iranian people. And so we should, not a single person posted about him or talked about him, but I want to say Pat Fallon making that declaration, I think this is a huge move. Iranians should put pressure on the Biden administration, not only to sanction Iran's oil, but to fire Robert Malley, because his association with particular groups is questionable. His son works for an organization that's questionable. Yeah. There's a lot of things with that. So that's the Biden administration.
No, and let me just say that a couple of months ago, I did an opening essay about that, saying that he should step aside or be fired. Obviously, so impactful that he's still in his position, but I agree that it is definitely problematic having somebody there who clearly is speaking the language of reform still in some of his statements, and notwithstanding all those other ties, the son and all that stuff. Yes, okay, go ahead. How are you helping the young women in Iran by going to the city council of Orange County?
So unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity, and actually that's not true. I've met with multiple senators' offices. So I have been meeting with senators' offices or their foreign policy advisors via Zoom, because a lot of my followers will make appointments as constituents and then invite me to join them on the Zoom so we can have kind of a collective voice. But the reason I go to the city council meetings is because I haven't had the opportunity to go. If I could sit in front of Secretary Hillary Clinton or Secretary Anthony Blinken, I would love that opportunity. I don't have it. So I'm not just going to sit and do nothing. I will talk to anyone at any level who's willing to listen. And when we give some really passionate speeches, and to see elected government officials at any level support unanimously the fight for freedom for the Iranian people, just brings legitimacy to the cause. And we might have to start at that level. I can't have such an ego that I'm above being arm in arm with other Iranians and going to city council meetings. And so it's really an incredible scene to see these speeches of people in the community coming, crying, and talking about people all the way in Iran and what they're fighting for.
Say the Los Angeles City Council, I'm just making this up, but were to pass an ordinance saying we condemn the Iranian, the current regime in power in the Islamic Republic of Iran. What effect do you think that would have?
So ultimately, we want effect on a federal level, but let's say within a district, like let's use Orange County for example. So within Orange County, there are various cities, Irvine, Newport, various cities, right? If the majority of these cities pass this resolution, right, that they want to see a condemnation of the Islamic Republic, or they support certain actions, well, that puts pressure on our Congress members for that district, representatives of that district, to then take that issue up on a federal level. So it starts the process to put pressure on Congress members of Congress to then bring this up on the House floor. So it ideally, we would be just meeting with senators and congresspeople, but if we're not getting their attention, we start at a level, and then if that particular Congress member doesn't want to bring it up, they're going to have a hard time not speaking up for their constituents who are saying, we want to pass this resolution.
Now, let me ask you about some of the response that you've been getting, and I know about this because you've posted about it. It's funny. It's a funny thing, last year or was it last year? I guess, pretty much last year was an election year in the U.S., or a year and a half ago, whatever it was, 2 years ago, what am I saying, when Biden was elected, and we had folks who were in Los Angeles coming on the show saying it's really difficult how divided the Iranian community can get. People were, those who were Democrats were getting flack from the Republicans, and those who were Republicans were getting flack from the Democrats. And so intra-Iranian community anger and debate and all of this, because some don't care for Trump and others don't think that the Democrats are going to be as strong on Iran, etc. So now we're supposedly in this moment of unity. We talk about how much unity there is in the global Iranian diaspora, and yet it seems that you've been receiving some flack for being a Republican. And so what is the flack you've been receiving, and why do you think you've been receiving it?
First, I want to say I think it's a minority. I think the people that are giving me flack are a small minority of maybe super extremists on the other side. I have Democrat members in my family. I argue with them constantly. But I want to say, just because someone is a Democrat or Republican or independent, their motives are not what we're questioning. We're not questioning where their heart is and their motives are. What we're saying is, when it comes to foreign policy with the Islamic Republic, Republicans have a better track record. They're tougher on them. That is just fact. And so to say, but it doesn't mean that we're discounting all of your other arguments of why you don't particularly like the Republican Party. But where you lose the argument on either side is when you attack someone's motives, right? And so the people who are attacking me are saying that my motives, or that I should be shut down because I'm a Republican. And that ideology is awfully similar to the Islamic Republic's ideology, that we have to completely cancel and shut down any opposing viewpoints. And so from what I understand, that's been it. I recently posted a video of an Israeli flag with an Iranian flag. Israel has been very outspoken about their support for the Iranian people and their fight for freedom. And what I'm trying to make the Iranian community understand is we have to be Iranian first. And if someone gives us support, we give them support. And so that was another thing, that when I posted that, they said that, I don't know what their problem with that honestly was. I was just saying.
Well, there are a lot of people on the left who, for a long time, have had issues with Israel, and so they're conflating their problems with that, with seeing you post that, but I mean, are you when you say that? I mean, are they literally saying this person should be shut down because they're a Republican? Because that I have a lot of amazing Democrat friends. That's what I want to say. I have a lot of friends who are on the other side of the aisle, and we will never get anything done unless we work together. We will never get anything done. So they have been so incredible, have amplified my voice. I want to make sure that we're not really, I don't want to make it a broad statement like it's them, but they have sent me things that have come up to it actually says, Mahsa is problematic because of her Republican views, and we need to not amplify her voice, like verbatim. So I have that. I just wanted to address it to let people know, I'm not afraid, but I didn't want to bring specific names to them. Right. And you've been very actively sort of condemning or suggesting that you don't think NIAC folks are helpful to the revolution. So how is that different?
So this is actually a great point. So NIAC, that organization, even motive-wise, right? My understanding is from just my own research that their viewpoints just always happen to align with the Islamic Republic viewpoints. Now, whether they did that on purpose or didn't do it on purpose, but their views are problematic. They seem to have apologized away many of the despicable, heinous acts of the Islamic Republic. Their voice is absolutely hurtful to the Iran revolution. So if we all have this one common goal, and the common goal is to free Iran, if I start speaking out in a way where I'm harmful to the revolution, I can understand being shut down and saying, look, we have this common goal, it's a free Iran. You're now spewing something in contrast of that, and we can't be amplifying your voice as Iranian community. So I think as long as you're not spreading something that is harmful, I have not talked about any American politics. I'm only talking about freeing Iran and any politics. You.
The motive thing, I got it. That's actually makes a lot of sense. See, you're saying if somebody is on board with we want a regime change in Iran, you're okay with their political stripe. Can I?
Exactly.
Now, I mean, I don't want to go. This is actually to be honest, this whole conversation, this part of it, feels like a distraction from the goal. It's like who's Republican, who's Democrat. I mean, the goal is, spending our time, including this real estate here, talking about Iran and keeping the focus there. But just to complete the thought experiment, so if a communist says, I am a communist. I believe in communism. I want communism in Iran. I believe fundamentally in regime change. I want to be part of the revolution regime change right now. But I also believe in communism, which is where I want things to end up. Would you say, okay, let's work together?
This is actually a really interesting point. I met with a group of women who are putting something together, an organization to combat NIAC, like a different version of it. And she said, really sweet, she said, we're going to be really inclusive. We're going to include anybody from anywhere. And I said to her, I think that actually, if your goal is a secular, democratically elected government for Iran, you can't be exclusive. You have this focus. And so if you have a Marxist ideology or socialist ideology or communist ideology, you don't stand for a secular, democratically elected government for Iran. And for that reason, we're not going to be on the same side. However, I have seen that opposition groups have really refrained from attacking each other thus far because they have one goal, which is get rid of the Islamic Republic. And then the second stage will be that infighting, right? And so I commend all of the parties for not creating that infighting because we do have a common goal, but some Iranians in the diaspora absolutely are for a secular, democratically elected government. And for that reason, we can't be inclusive of someone who wants communism for Iran.
But you don't want, presumably you want self-determination in Iran for the Iranian people, right? The Iranian people get to choose, right?
Right. No, if the majority of, again, I would still, if the majority of Iranians want communism, I would still probably on my platform say I'm absolutely against it. But if that's what you want, that's what you want.
That's yeah. That would be my position. It's like if Iranians inside Iran decide on communism, who are we to say, no, right?
But I would still say no. Just being honest.
Right. No, I understand that you wouldn't appreciate that.
They're going to come after me too.
Yes. Tell me a bit about what the just before I let you go. It's I do appreciate just how active you've been and how you've really. I think you've probably. Given your social media presence has been pretty significant. Some of those followers have probably not been following you for political reasons, and so you've been reaching a whole demographic that folks who have always only posted about politics might not be reaching. What has that been like for you in terms of the discourse, the exchange with your followers?
I can tell you, and I was actually joking with my Democrat friends. I said, I don't get any heat from my conservative friends when I share my Democrat friends. They're not canceling me because I'm amplifying the voices of my friends from the other side of the aisle. It just seems to come from one side. But Jian, I would say for every one negative comment, I probably have 1,000 positive, supportive. I get emotional thinking about it because the Iranian community is so warm, is so loving. I cannot, even when I've run into you, and it was just it's a different level of warmth, of connection, of unity. So really, I want to emphasize these things have been very minor, small little pockets, and the majority of the feedback has been of love and unity.
Yeah. I wouldn't even know about it if you didn't post about it. That's one of the reasons sometimes to not even post about it, to not give it oxygen.
Yeah, but you can't fix what you don't acknowledge. And so this is a wrong train of thought. And my main reason of posting it is I might be brave enough, or I might be tough enough where I'll call you out. Someone else might not. And I want those individuals to see me just like I've seen people, these activists for Iran. I remember the first time they were talking about taking your hijab off or anything negative about the Islamic Republic. This is years ago. I remember watching and thinking, wow, they're so brave, right? And so I think that's contagious. And so I only post because I'm hoping, I'm older, like maybe a 20-year-old Iranian sees that and finds that courage and says, I'm going to say something also.
Well, tell me about before I let you go, tell me about your family and the conversations you've been having with your non-Iranian husband. Does he, did you have to have a conversation? Did you sort of say, hey, listen, I'm going to go into this, we're going to take some flack for this, I'm going to be on the front lines, or is he just, I'm sure he's used to you now, so he knows that you're not shy. Tell me about that.
Well, first, we originally met through a mutual friend, Kusha, and I used to go on her Instagram account, and I talked a lot of, ish about the Iranian men and how you should marry an American guy, and I would joke and say that. And I've said to her, I said, I need to come out publicly and apologize to every Iranian man because I am so proud of how we talk about the women, and it's a women-led movement, but these Iranian men that are young men that are so brave, both in Iran, both here, that manhood, that it just is so incredible, and it's so beautiful, and it's unique to our culture. And so I said to her, I need to come make a public apology to all the Iranian men. You're incredible. We honor you. We're proud of you. Thank you for being with us in this fight and leading the way and putting your life in danger. So I've gone from like, I'm like, this is your fault. But he's very, very supportive. A lot of times he's with our kids when I'm out in protest, and my kids have had a hard time adjusting because I've been not available like I have been. But
what do you say to them?
I want them to understand that freedom is the most important thing that they have, that we all have, and it's worth fighting for. And if you have the ability to be free, you speak out. And so my daughter recently said to Kevin and I, I've been American up until now. From now on, I'm just Iranian. And like it doesn't work like that, but that sense of pride is coming in her also. And it's a wonderful. It's really, for Christmas, I actually bought them all Farsi books so they can, learn Farsi. But my in-laws and my husband have been very supportive of my activity to free Iran.
Mahsa John, before I let you go, I did an essay on this show, I don't know, 6-7 weeks ago, talking about the rebirth of Iranian pride, and it's something that a bunch of us have been talking about, about how we feel this pride or rehabilitated feelings about being Iranian, and that we owe that to those young people in Iran who started this movement. And as somebody who, it's interesting, I didn't actually know your story. I've always thought of you as very American because of the way you talk. From what I understand now, when you came to the States at the age of 10, you didn't even speak English at all, right? So you were a real, Irani girl. And as you say, I mean, and I totally get it because I went through something similar, that you kind of were in the ethnic closet. You went and, you wanted to sort of hide your Iranianness because you only associated it with bad things. In my case, it was just I didn't want to be called a terrorist and stuff. But tell me about how the Iranian in you, the kid who actually grew up there, has flowered in recent weeks.
Oh gosh, it's just a lot of suppressed, I don't even know if I've ever dealt with it, but it's a lot of suppression. It's that survival instinct, that you moved here. And it was, I think even when I said goodbye to my grandmother, I didn't realize it was forever. I look back in that moment in the airport. Sorry, I'm going to get emotional. And now I'm a mother, and I see it from my mother's eyes, and she watched her children say goodbye to her mother forever. It's a lot of pain. It's a lot of pain, and that I don't think I've quite dealt with. But I think, like you said, this is an opportunity for me to teach my kids to hold their head up high, that they have this incredible blood running through their body. And I'm hoping that during this process, I find some healing and deal with a lot of, like, even my dad, he was in prison and he was really depressed after the Shah was exiled because he was a supporter. And I think for a long time in my teenage years, my dad had become very much depressed and a recluse, and I held this against him. And he passed away last year, and I never really address that quite. And now I understand he had such pride for his country that it was really depressing, and he was tortured and a lot of other things. So a lot of things has come full circle, but I don't think I've completely healed. And I like to believe the things that I'm doing now will make him proud.
Yeah, I feel the same way with my dear dad, who's gone as well, and I think about him every day during this period and what this would mean to him as well.
Yeah, really. I wish they could see it. I feel like they're watching it. I really do. I feel like they're watching it. I really, really believe that.
Mahsa, thank you for the time, and thank you for being so open and for the candor and for all the passion that you're putting into what you're doing these days.
Thank you so much, Jian. Thank you for the opportunity. You have no idea how much I appreciate it. Thank you so much for the support.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Mahsa Townshend in Orange County, California. Thank you to her, Awin, Sara, and the Roqe team for this episode today. Back on Thursday with another edition of our Uprising series. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together: Sabi Roham, Talented Anihita, Super Parisa, Smart Pega, Ahai Mehrdad, and Groovy Shaya. Thank you to all of you guys out there supporting us, sharing our content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already on any of our platforms, and do support us if you wish to. If you like our content and want to be part of our crowdsourcing to keep this thing going, go to our website, roqmedia.com, and press the Support Us button. It can lead you to a page that shows you how you can support us from month to month with a small amount of support. Find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. Thank you again. Mizo and Bashin.